hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Shasti and here we talk about beauty, entertainment, celebrities, books, movies, TV shows, and kind of anything else that garners my attention this week. Now, I know it has been a very long time since you've seen me. I really have been over on TikTok, doing makeup content and doing really short form videos, but this whole thing on Twitter really had me thinking, and I was like, I need to make a video about this because I have so many opinions. When I was on Twitter, I saw a bunch of people talking about, the state of R&B music and how like it went from where it used to be in the 90s, 2000s to where it is now. If you don't know me, I am a huge R&B head. 90s, 2000s, presently, I love me some R&B music. And there is a difference in R&B of the past and present, and not just because, times have changed, but it's just like there are some things fundamentally that are very different about R&B. And one of the tweets they were talking about, use of more vulgar words in R&B that really massively changed the industry, as well as someone talking about that specific period in 2015 that caused the most massive shift of R&B. And I personally have so many thoughts about R&B and my own little theories. If you're one of my friends, you know I talk about the 4 horsemen of the R&B apocalypse. The 4 artists that I feel like really ushered in this new era of R&B that really isn't that great. Now, the music they make themselves is perfectly fine, but it is the sons and the imitators that follow them that really saturated the industry. So let's talk about these 4 horsemen. I just want to make a very clear disclaimer that my issue are not with these 4 artists themselves. I'm actually a fan of most of the artists I'm going to name. They were able to carve their own lanes and really do something different in R&B, and that's great for them. The issue are the sons they created and people who are trying to kind of bite off them and kind of follow their wave. And a lot of those imitations are the problem with R&B. So the 4 horsemen of the R&B apocalypse are The Weeknd, Party Next Door, Bryson Tiller, and Brent Faiyaz. In 2011, The Weeknd releases House of Balloons, which is the first part of his highly acclaimed trilogy. Now, 2011 is very important because this is following the success of R&B music, where it dominated the 90s and the early 2000s. It was at its height. There were R&B groups and R&B singers as far as the eye could see, but we hit the 2010s and the pendulum has swung. So from the 90s to the 2010s, R&B had its clutches in us. But we get into the 2010s and R&B is no longer at the top. Pop music is back at the top, dominating the charts. So now that R&B music is not on top and the genre is kind of dead, that creates all of this open space. And The Weeknd takes advantage of that and he releases in 2011. And it's so much easier for him to kind of rise to prominence and get a lot of attention because who really is his competition at this point? R&B really ain't moving like it used to. And at the time, The Weeknd was a fresh perspective in the R&B world. Now, The Weeknd does speak about a lot of the building blocks of R&B, which are relationships, love, and sex, but his perspective and his refusal to use flowery words is what sets him apart from his predecessors. Because even the most toxic music in early 2000s and 90s R&B, you still, if you weren't paying attention, you never got it. But with The Weeknd, he's talking about such dark themes in R&B, as well as being very open and honest about his very heavy drug use, his unhealthy ways of coping with it. And at the time, we really hadn't seen this type of candidness in R&B before. And so for him, he was unique. He was different. He was a breath of fresh air. This also coincides with the change of hip hop, where a lot of rappers are being very open and honest about their drug addictions and their drug habits. It all goes together. And I just want to make it very, very clear that I'm not saying that like The Weeknd is the first fuckboy of R&B. He's the first one to be open with his toxicity. No, no, no. The thing that sets him apart from his predecessors is his lack of wordplay, innuendo, and excessive cursing. Now, again, cursing is not new to R&B music, but the ways in which R&B singers today, I would argue, abuse curse words is very different. There really isn't much storytelling anymore, and you can tell that a lot of writers lack skill, and they kind of make up for it with being very abrasive in their language. There are still some very talented writers in R&B. One of the best examples of that will always be Victoria Monet, but everyone's not Victoria. And like The Weeknd was kind of the first R&B singer where we saw just not give a fuck and just say all the awful and mean things without really hiding behind pretty words, for good and for bad. So let's move on to Party Next Door, who released his self-titled album in 2013. Now, I think I need to talk about, or at least name off, the other very influential R&B albums that came out the year, so you can see the stark difference between Party and what was coming out. So in 2013, the internet released Feel Good, which is a phenomenal album. You got Ciara releasing her self-titled. You had Sampha releasing Duel, Thundercat, Apocalypse, Kalala releasing Cut For Me, and Janelle Monáe releasing The Electric Lady. So if you are familiar with those albums, you can see the stark difference between those albums I just named and Party Next Door's self-titled, which I have to say, I'm a huge Party Next Door album. His first two albums will go down as classics. They're just that good. Much like The Weeknd, Party Next Door was still talking about those major parts of R&B: relationships, sex, and love, but it was definitely not nearly as dark as the music that The Weeknd was releasing, but he was talking about drug use and being extremely vulgar in his music. And I feel like the vulgarity is really the big switch in R&B. Is, again, before there's so many music talking about sex from the 90s to 2000s, but innuendos, the art of innuendos has definitely been lost in recent years. I feel like even without innuendos, they were able to make songs that very clearly were about sex without being excessively vulgar. I feel like probably the best example of that is Freak Like Me by Adina Howard. There is no being around the bush about that song. You know exactly what she's talking about. And she says the words like, I need a roughneck nigga and all that. Like, there's no confusing what that song is about. And it's still not nearly as vulgar as like Party Next Door music is. And that really shows that you don't need to be explicit to get your point across. And I feel like that's where we're hitting this disconnect in the early 2010s with R&B, is we're losing the ability to not need to be vulgar. At this point, it's feeling like people are trying to like one up each other on like the vulgarity scale. Like, I can say some wilder shit than you can. To this day, you can see which male R&B singers or R&B singers period who were really, really big fans of Party Next Door and The Weeknd, because they can't write. And it's like, The Weeknd and Party, their writing for themselves are fine. It works for them because they were one of the first to do it. But the copycats, they're missing something. I think it is hard to replicate something, and you just see other people trying it, and it just seems so forced and so unnecessary. It's like, you ain't have to say the P word 50 times in this one verse. Like, was that truly, truly necessary? Now, let's talk about Bryson Tiller, who is a singer, songwriter, and rapper. This is going to be very, very important. Now, Bryson came on to the mainstream in 2015 when his hit single Don't dropped, which then followed his highly successful debut album Trap Soul. Bryson was able to carve out this lane for himself where he perfectly married hip hop and R&B together into his music. Now, hip hop and R&B have always gone together, and we've seen it through the 90s and 2000s of how R&B singers and rappers kind of worked and bounced off each other. Bryson is nowhere near the first. He's not even the one that perfected it. But at this point in R&B, we don't really have much anymore. So for 2015, Bryson's sound was something brand new. And again, Bryson is a rapper as well as a singer. And that's where we get this really sad point in male R&B where male R&B singers following Bryson stop singing. They start talk singing, and it is gut-wrenching. Because before this, R&B singers could blow, okay? They couldn't sing, they could sing. It was a requirement to be an R&B singer. And it's not just talking about being able to belt. I'm talking having perfect pitch, being able to utilize their voices. Because even like someone like, I would say, what's her name? Maya. Not a big voice, but it was gorgeous. It was beautiful. It was perfect. Even though she wasn't a belter, she had an amazing voice. We get Bryson, and then he kind of unintentionally ushers in talk singing, when in reality he's just a singer and a rapper. But a lot of these other dudes, they can't rap, or they're failed rappers. And then it kind of opens the door for a lot of male R&B singers who maybe can't, not to say they can't sing, but they can't really go up and down the scales. They can sing well enough and they can flow, but they're not singers anymore. Now let's talk about Brent Faiyaz, who rose to fame in 2016 when he was featured on Gold Link's song Crew, and he was singing the hook, and he is the most memorable part of that song. Now, Brent is also another singer who raps. There's an album early on in his career that was definitely far more rapping than singing, but he is considered a singer as well as a rapper. Brent does talk about a lot of infidelity in his music, which is not a new topic of R&B. Off the top of my head, Confessions by Usher, like, come on, is the like infidelity album. But it is the way that Brent refuses to beat around the bush and is just so unabashedly, like, almost unremorseful for his infidelities, that really sets him apart from his predecessors. I genuinely, when I listen to Brent's music, I'm like, this man does not care about the destruction he has caused in these women's lives. He's just doing what feels right. That's actually how he got dubbed the Toxic King. And I don't know how this happened, but following Brent Faiyaz, we got this wave of R&B singers that are, one, unapologetically toxic. Like, we've been getting a lot of toxic music, The Weeknd and The Party Next Door, but like it hit a all-time high with Brent. And with the infidelity like being such a blasé topic, came a bunch of R&B singers that wanted to be thugs and wanted to be gangsters. I don't know how the two came up together, but they did. And you got a lot of R&B singers that wanted the treatment of rappers, like they don't hit falsettos. Like, it was a very strange, like, coming together to being like, I'm toxic as shit, fuck women, y'all a bunch of bitches, yada yada yada, and now I want to run around with guns and be a street dude. Like, how did we even get here? And like, I don't want to 100% blame Brent for that, but I don't think he helped with this like toxic thing he was bringing into music. And I feel like at this point of 2015, 2016, R&B had lost its love. People were still talking about relationships and sex, but no one was talking about love. No one wanted to be in love. No one wanted to treat their partners right. It was cheating and side bitches. It was, I hate you and I'm gonna do the worst thing to you. I'm gonna do drugs and I'm gonna destroy your life. Like, we completely lost the romance of R&B. No one was begging no more. No one was in the rain crying. We lost what made R&B so beautiful. It's because it's very hard for me to like think of R&B music and not think about a love song. That is such an important part of R&B. And when you're looking at the R&B singers that were coming out between 2010 and I want to say maybe 2018, 2019, none of them really had a love song. You know what I mean? Like, the women were definitely having a little bit of a different time in R&B. Some of them were emulating what the men were doing, but then we got SZA and we got the Summer Walkers. I feel like female R&B was able to shake, the apocalypse far better than a lot of the men. A lot of the men are still making that type of music, but we're getting a lot more women singing about love. The best example of that is Victoria Monet. She's doing it. Listen, SOS, bringing innuendos back. Okay, she's carrying R&B on her back. Summer Walker may be a bird, but she's a bird that is willing to fall in love. Okay, Coco Jones, like the girls in R&B are doing all right. The men have Lucky Day, and that's it. And no one is listening to his music. So what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Because like, it is very sad to see one of my most favorite genres, people talk about it and it's like R&B's dead, R&B dead. So I'm like, no. Like, there's so many good R&B singers. Like Flo just dropped their album and it's no skips. Like, you just gotta like search and dig, because now you don't really need to pay attention to the charts to find good quality music. But the good quality music is just struggling to break through all the noise, but it's always been like that. The songs that are on the chart are very rarely the best songs that are actually out at that time, and you really do need to go look for it. But I am hoping we get, some more change in male R&B, because it was sad for a while, because again, the women were doing it too. Like, they were following the same toxic, cheating, overly, vulgar, no more innuendos. Because I love Tink, but like, Tink, sweetie, let's pick up a better pen. Guys' thoughts and opinions on the state of R&B music. I would love to have a discussion. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hopefully y'all see me in another video. No promises, but hopefully.